What's up, everybody? My name is Navene Koperweis, and I wanted to give you guys a look about what's going on underneath the hood with what I just played. I wanted to do these songs with 100% just the Sensory software. So I didn't want there to be loops. I didn't want it to be done to a metronome. I wanted it to be completely free form. So although there is 3 distinct parts, what I can do within each part is completely up to me, and I can do it completely on the fly. Last night we did a showcase and we played live, and some parts I would do a little longer if I felt like the crowd liked it, or maybe I would slow it down a little bit, or do a lead for longer or shorter, or play the third part as the second part. So there is so much flexibility, and I can just play it however I want, essentially. Okay, so the first thing that I've got going on is just a kick drum, and that would be, with my particular set, I'm just using just one zone, and I have a sequencer running in the pad controller, which has 5 different samples of the kick drum, and it simply cycles through. So every time I hit the kick, it gives you 1 sample, and then it goes to the next one. So you have the same kick drum, but you have 5 different variations of that kick, and it gives it the more natural feel. All right, so next up is what I would consider to be the fun part. This is when I cut up all the guitar and bass samples, and those are on with the kick drum. So the way I do that is, first I actually record all the guitar sounds that you hear. So I kind of figure out a riff or a scale or just something that catches my ear, and I'll do that in my recording program. I'll record each note one at a time, and then I'll do it again for the bass. And so I export the bass and the guitar together, and then I put that on multiple different sequencers, which is being triggered by the kick. The trick was to try to figure out how I was going to do multiple riffs. And the way that I do that is with another sequencer. So I have the pad controller with a sequencer in there. And then this time, instead of it having a sequence that just cycles through, I set it to manually change. And so on the first step, I have riff number 1, which was the open kind of riff. And then what I did was I routed the next step to the rim of the rack tom. So when I hit the rim of the rack tom, it plays a splash sample, and then it moves to the next step. So, and it enables me to do as many parts or as many riffs as I want to do for a song. That's part number 2. And then part number 3 was, it's a bit of a more complicated part, and I literally played each note individually, cut them up, and put them in order on its own sequencer, and that's the... So after it does that, I hit it again, and it goes back to 1. So the next thing that I wanted to do, I had the idea to do all the drums on one pad. So I did snare is in the center, and then I have toms on the edge. So you got the... And again, that is a multi-sampled snare. So you have multiple snare hits from each velocity, going from soft all the way up to hard. And that is all done within the pad controller. And then I have a hit controller, and that allows you to put the soft samples with the soft hits, and then the medium, and then hard, and then extra hard. So they're linked to each velocity. And that gives you really natural, cool, expressive snare sound. And then the next thing that I wanted to figure out how to do was put multiple drums on the edge. I actually have 3 different toms cycling through on the edge. So you have, and they just go in that order all the time. And so what I've done there is I've got 5 samples of each tom, totaling in 15. The reason why I did that is because I didn't want it to have an even group, because then your ear would kind of start to catch that. And so it has this odd grouping, and so it kind of gives me the feel like I have kind of what I would do on a drum set. So, I mean, I wanted to get as much as I could done with a small amount of drums and pads. So that's why I chose to have this be the snare and the toms. Next, I went to program the cymbals, and I decided to do a similar thing. We have a pad controller for the floor tom, and in the center, I've got hi-hats. And on the edge, I have multiple crashes. And so again, with the crashes, I did something similar to the toms where it'll just cycle through different crash sounds, just so it's not stale and it's not the same crash every single time. And with that, I'm able to get done what you might do with 4 pads on one. The sounds on the crash are sounds that I actually recorded. So the cymbals are from my own samples, and the kick and the snare are from a company called Mixwave. Okay, then we've got some synth stuff going on. And the first one is a pretty simple atmospheric pad, which is triggered off of the rim of the floor tom. That's how I start the song, create the atmosphere. And then, so I recorded this note in my recording program. I just recorded one note, exported it, and then I exported it pretty dry. And I added in the delay in Sensory. So I can show you what that sounds like. No delay, and then with the delay. So you got the nice delay trail, and I think that's what's a really cool feature about the program is you can put all your samples in there and you can play them just fine, but you can create a lot more atmosphere and go way more in depth with all the effects. So I love having that option. And then the next sample would be a few little lead synth notes that I have on the rack tom. And the rack tom sort of acts as a multi-purpose pad. So I'll either have guitar parts or synth parts and just little extras, stuff like that. So here I have the lead line, and I can go between the two. And the lead line was done the same way. I played each note individual, exported each note, and put them in a sequencer. So another thing I do with this pad, the same part change applies to it as well. So when I hit this rim, I'm gonna go from part 1 to part 2. So part 2 on the rack has guitar notes. And that way I can kind of go between the two and create a cool guitar riff. So yeah, love that. And once again, with the rack, we have a pad controller and then a sequencer, which is manually being triggered to go to each step. And then down over here, we have each part on the step. So you got 1, 2, and then 3. There's just, that is for part 3, but there's no sound there. So if there's no sound, I'll just leave it blank, but I still have to have the step so each part matches up in the end. So yeah, lastly on the snare, I play the lead on the rim. So I'm using 3 zones on the snare. You've got the snare in the center, toms on the edge, and then we have the lead on the rim. And so for this song, I have 2 leads. Part 2 has its own lead. And the way that I'm doing that is I just have 1 full scale. Each note rings out for a long time. So I have 1 octave of a scale. I put all the notes in the sequencer and they're played at random. So the lead on this particular one is just random the whole time. So it creates a very eerie melody that goes great with heavy music. Okay, so on the leads, I have also added the delay and the reverb. And that way I can have the delay trails continue on when the notes stop and just makes everything flow really nicely, gives it a finished mixed sound. And the last thing that I'll talk about is the lead for the last riff. And that one, actually, I do play in order. So I have, again, recorded each note, let it hang out, and that would be in part number 3. And the notes are in sequence, 1 through 8. And so when I play 1 note, and we got the lead line, which fits over the last riff. All the songs came about just experimenting with the Sensory software. So it was kind of just one idea at a time. I would mess around on guitar until something caught my ear, and I thought, okay, let me cut those up, put them on the drums, see how it sounds, and then go to the next one, same way. But by the time I got to my 4th song, I kind of had a system down. So I was able to do it in more clean steps. So I just sit down for a couple hours and make all the samples for a whole song, and then apply them everywhere and then play it. It was the first time that I had used the Sensory Percussion software and the hardware on stage, and it went completely flawlessly. It worked, everything worked perfectly, and it was such a fun event. I made 4 songs specifically for the event, but in the future, I love the amount of what's going on here, but I think I would just keep going and making new songs for a release or another show. I am pretty familiar with a lot of different DAWs, Ableton being one of them, and so I have had some experience with Ableton, and coming from Ableton to this, I mean, there was pretty much 0 learning curve for me. I just instantly knew once I looked through the different controllers that the program offers, I really understood the concept. So it's very clear what you get and what you want to do with it. That being said, there is a lot of parameters to each thing. So I think the overview and jumping in and getting to make stuff is easy right off the bat if you're familiar with Ableton or any DAW. And then, of course, the in-depth stuff is going to take a bit more, but I really didn't run into any considerable speed bumps or anything like that when I was working on the software. It is pretty advanced, like especially for what I'm doing. Like, I already had a concept for what I wanted to do, and I wanted to make all my own samples, and I produce music. But there are a lot of ready to go, ready to play presets in the program. So that would be an easy way to add the pads and just plug and play. So this was my original idea of what I wanted to do with the software. I had the idea to do the chugging guitar riffs on the kick, the multi-pad drums on here, the leads, everything like that. And I think the next thing that I would do with it is bring it to an acoustic kit and have the mesh pads with my acoustic drums. I really want to do that. I want to go more in depth with the guitars and the bass, have those separated out. So I'm triggering, maybe they could be different parts that are happening together. And yeah, there you have it. That is how I constructed that song. It was something I conceptualized first, and then the Sensory software was perfect for bringing it to life. So thanks a lot for watching the video, you guys. I'm excited to see how you guys use Sensory Percussion, and hopefully that was inspirational and helps get you guys going.